Good morning, Lionhearts. How are you today? It's your old pal Jordan. We're starting today with a hike up to the Griffith Observatory. We're gonna have one of those days where we get our heart rate pumping first thing in the morning and see where the day takes us. I don't have anything I have to do. The overwhelming cloud of the taxes are now out from over my head, and I can go back to enjoying life and now thinking about vlogging and this trip to Sweden. They got me all pumped up yesterday talking about it, and it's gonna be a lot more than I thought as far as like the things that I get to do, the things they're gonna show me. I thought I was gonna be going for like 3 or 4 days, and they're like, no, we want you for over a week, but you're welcome to stay more, 2 weeks if you want. So it sounds like a lot of fun, and I get a lot of really great vlogging done over there that I can't do anywhere else, right? Like, we're talking Viking history. Head on into the trails. About halfway there. Even this part of the trail has experienced a little bit of the super bloom. This is never like this. There you can see the Hollywood sign off to the side. Well, it's actually kind of right in the center, isn't it? And view of the city. Here's the trail that we just walked up. You can see how it winds around all the way down there. Now we're heading up. Almost there, probably like 5 minutes from the top. Where James Dean became immortal. Here's the other side of the mountain that we just hiked up. All the skyscrapers are, it's downtown LA. I can't remember the last time I saw a caterpillar. There's the James Dean statue straight ahead. Since we're up here, we might as well go take a look at the view from up here. And yes, I do totally appreciate that any day I can take a 20-minute walk and hang out where one of the most iconic movies of all time, Rebel Without a Cause, was filmed. I know I've showed this before, but I love this view where you get the Hollywood sign right behind this statue. Alright, John and I are done and we're gonna head on home. A lot of people out here utilize these trails. There's various different kind of hiking trails out here that everyone uses for exercise, and I actually just ran into one of our neighbors, one of Jaw's favorite people, when we were out here hiking. So Michael was telling me last night when I was over there that I said, do I need to get fitted for a tuxedo or anything like that before we go, or are we gonna do all that stuff over there? And he goes, actually we're not gonna probably do tuxedos, because in Sweden, certain times of the year, if you're not supposed to get married in tuxedos. It's like bad luck, or you just, like, it's frowned upon. So I don't know what we're gonna be wearing, but it's not gonna be a tuxedo. Oh wow, check out this place. I've seen it before, but I think you guys should get a view of it. How about that? The neighbor's not too shabby either. Safety last. Alright, I'm home, I got my shower, and I think I'm ready to go out and do some vlogging. I think I'm going to go do what I was actually going to swing by and do yesterday and wasn't able to. I'm going to drive out to the Pacific Palisades, and I'm going to kind of honor one of my favorite comedians of all time. Maybe one of the most unorthodox people that ever came down the pipe, but I love him. Well, I'm out here in Pacific Palisades, right here on the water. And there's a little trail right here that takes you right down into the beach. And today's vlog is actually about, if you can believe it, one of my favorite comedians, Andy Kaufman. And right behind me is where Andy Kaufman last lived when he died. A lot of you may know Andy from Taxi. A lot of you may know him as being the guy who did the Elvis impersonations. A lot of you may know him as the guy who wrestled women. He was all of those things, and you might also know him as the guy who many believed faked his own death. See, Andy Kaufman always had this style of comedy where nothing was what it seemed. There was always a joke beyond the joke beyond the joke beyond the joke. And that's pretty much how his whole career played out. I once heard an interview with Rodney Dangerfield talking about when Andy first auditioned in New York for Dangerfields. He said the protocol was that you showed up, you waited till everybody was done for the end of the night, and then you got to do a couple of minutes of material to see if they would let you perform there. And Andy waited all night, and had brought his drum set in his van and had parked in the alleyway. And so when it was his turn to go up, he spent all of his set putting up the drum set, adjusting it, you know, just testing it out, hitting a few cymbals here and there just to make sure that it was ready to go. And then as soon as he got it ready to go, he started taking it apart, put it away, and that was the end of his set. And Rodney Dangerfield thought it was genius. That's pretty much Andy Kaufman in a nutshell. Now, like I said, he was also known for just being completely outlandish. And one of my favorite movies of all time is actually kind of a spoof. It's called My Breakfast with Blassie. And he modeled it after another movie. And what's interesting about it is the whole thing is a setup. It's a breakfast between him and Fred Blassie, the wrestling manager, and they just kind of talk about various things inside of a restaurant. And while this is going on, all kinds of bizarre things start happening in the restaurant. Andy starts acting weird, and it's pretty great. I love it. But this was kind of right after Andy was doing all the wrestling. And if you don't know about it, Andy grew up loving wrestling. I mean, he loved it so much, he actually would have rather been a wrestler probably than a comedian. And he was able to talk Jerry the King Lawler into coming up with this plan where he wanted to be the best bad guy there was. And so he figured the best way to incite hatred was to always try and wrestle women. And threatened that, you know, if any woman could beat him, he would give them all this money, and then he would just mock them and belittle them while they did it.
You want to wrestle me? You want to wrestle me, Memphis style? All right, fine. I'm not afraid of you, Mr. Lawler, because let me tell you something. True, I only wrestle women, but I've wrestled women that are a lot bigger and stronger than you. Matter of fact, they're probably smarter than you because you don't have any brains. You're from Memphis, Tennessee. All you do is plow the fields and farm and the farm and is that how you talk in Memphis, Tennessee, Mr. Lawler? Duh.
It's all a big spoof and everything, and then but it went all the way to the point where they took it on to David Letterman and pulled off a moment where Jerry Lawler slaps Andy Kaufman so hard it almost knocks his teeth out, it looks like. And Andy goes nuts, he's cussing on the air, and even Dave doesn't know if it's a routine or not. When I knew Roddy Piper, one of the stories he told me is he said, I was wrestling one night in the late 70s at the Olympic Auditorium in downtown Los Angeles, and I always waited a couple hours after the matches were over because I always had a lot of heat, which meant anybody could be out in the parking lot waiting for me to try and stab me or something. And he said, I waited a couple hours, and about 2 in the morning I came walking out, and there was Andy Kaufman standing in front of a white van, and we hung out. He said we drove around the city, we talked, he wanted to know everything there was about wrestling, and then he said that was the first night I went to the Comedy Store. He brought me out to the Comedy Store and showed me comedy. And he said he had tremendous respect for the wrestling business, and that's why all that happened. But like I said, when Andy was like known for Taxi also, so let's go over to his house. He was known for Taxi, but he hated TV. He thought it was just like a terrible medium. He considered himself a song and dance man, and so he wanted to do like variety shows and things like that. So he would put in stipulations, like the only way he would do Taxi was if his alter ego Tony Clifton got to perform on the show. And if he could get a variety show, and he would just put all this stuff in there, mainly just because he didn't want to do it. And, you know, in his 30s, he was still pretty young, and Taxi was canceled, and he found out that he had lung cancer. Now, it's always reported that Andy wasn't a smoker, and he wasn't later on in his life, not in his adult life, but in high school he was a smoker, so that could have had something to do with it. But this right here was the last home of Andy Kaufman. And like I was telling you guys before, a lot of people don't believe he's dead because he used to talk a lot and write a lot in his papers about wanting to fake his own death, that he had just gotten too famous, kind of the Richard Simmons thing where he just couldn't escape the fame, and a lot of people thought that he faked his death. And he had told different people over the years he wanted to do it, and even told different people different ways of like saying like, well, if I ever did it, I would come back 20 years because that's how you really do it after 20 years. And there was always this kind of speculation, and then his girlfriend at the time, Lynn, has said there's no way he's definitely, or she said there's no way he faked it, he's definitely dead. Bob Zamuda, who was his partner, who also has kept on the Tony Clifton legacy since then, and was in My Breakfast with Blassie. He's the guy that ends up coming over and acting like he's thrown up on the table. He said that Andy's dead. However, every year in New York they do an Andy Kaufman Awards show, and a couple of years ago Andy's brother was there presenting an award, and he was telling a story of how he kind of believes that Andy might be alive, because what he said was, he said that when Andy had died, he was looking through all of Andy's paperwork and all of his writings and stuff, and he said he had found places where Andy had said that he wanted to fake his own death, and that if he ever did, he would come back in 1999 to a specific restaurant to meet whoever found the writings. And so his brother went to that restaurant in 1999, said he sat at the table and waited, and an envelope was delivered to him. And when he opened it up, it was a letter from Andy, and he said it had a lot of secrets and a lot of things that nobody else would know other than those two, and said that it said that he had been living happily, married, ever since, with 2 kids, and he didn't want his dad to know he was still alive. He didn't want him to have a stroke or anything. And then a couple of years ago, at that same event, a woman came out claiming to be Andy's daughter, and that Andy had considered coming that night and then changed his mind at the last minute. So who knows? His brother met with her and said that she knew a lot of things also, that only like a secret handshake they had, or ways that Andy would tease him that nobody else would know. But he also said, hey, anything is possible with Andy. It could be a hoax, it could not be. We'll never know until he comes out. Now, of course, Andy was like the first comedian guest for Saturday Night Live, which was also pretty monumental. And he did his whole Mighty Mouse routine there. He did his Elvis routine. And actually, Elvis Presley was quoted as saying that Andy was his favorite Elvis impersonator alive. Andy would eventually leave the country to try and treat his cancer holistically, but to no avail, he did die from it. Or so we all believe. I'm back in the neighborhood, and as soon as I parked my car and got a spot, I realized I forgot to stop at the auto parts store and buy a windshield wiper blade. So, I'm just gonna walk down to the AutoZone and buy one. That's where they film Let's Make a Deal. As well as Judge Judy. I love this sign. No weapons on campus. Bring a weapon, get arrested, or expelled. I wonder if you get a choice. And I think that means no upside down parking. See, they should have put one of those no graffiti signs. There it is. Right on the other side of the Hollywood Forever Cemetery is my AutoZone. Well, I got my windshield wiper blade, but I feel like since I was kind of a few blocks away from another place that sells them, I'm just gonna go over and see how much they are over there. But I figured if they don't happen to have them, which is a good possibility, at least I would already have this one if I bought this. So walk over there and see what they got. Now this building right here is a bar at night, but it's kind of interesting because if you saw La La Land, this is actually where Ryan Gosling opens his jazz club at the end, where she comes in and she's already married and she sees him playing. I'm trying to shield out the sun, but that's what it looks like. I'll probably do a La La Land vlog filming location at some point. I was just kind of waiting for the movie to come out a little bit more so more people would have seen it and enjoy it more. Right here's where their car would have been parked when they first show up here the first time. Well, the place with the windshield wipers, they were closed already, but I popped in the Goodwill and I found these. These are pretty interesting. They're hand crocheted. Can you see that? I'm not gonna get them. They're really cheap though. I just don't have anywhere for them. They're pretty cool. Definitely not the weirdest thing I found today though. This might be the weirdest thing I found. There. 2 new windshield wiper blades. Well, from your old pal Jordan the Lion in Hollywood, California, you are not going to want to miss tomorrow. I can promise you that. Good night.